Welcome to Audio Branding, the hidden gem of marketing. Sound plays a more important role in human behavior and our decision-making than you may realize. In this podcast, I'll help you understand the art and science of sound so you can better influence others in business and your life. I'm your host, Jodi Krangle. Let's delve a little deeper. It's great to have you here. Thank you so much for coming on the show. I really appreciate it.
Sure. Thanks for having such a great onboarding process. You're so organized and planned, and the checklist before the show starts.
I'm so glad.
I forwarded it to my other shows saying this is the way it should be done.
That's awesome. I'm glad to hear it. Making it easy is all, that's what I want to do. So, so thank you. And the first question that I always ask is if you have an early memory of how sound moved you. I like to get to the background of how people got into what they are doing. And this is kind of one of those almost like very, very rudimentary, basic back when you were a kid questions that just kind of hits people in the feels. So,
Well, I mean, I would say the earliest time that sound moved me was it moved me to fear.
Oh, okay.
Because the earliest thing I remember hearing as a little kid, toddler, that scared the life out of me was fireworks.
Oh.
And being near my folks took me, and I don't remember if my brother was born yet, so I was really little, maybe. And then they took me to a fireworks show, and they found great parking right next to all the emergency vehicles. They're like, wow, what a great spot. Not realizing that they were parked probably within 100, 200 feet of the firing line. I don't know how this happened or why it happened, but whatever the case. So they were there watching we were there for the show, and these things are blowing off right in front of us, and it terrified me.
I don't blame you. That's loud.
Yeah, and so that always triggered this fear of sudden loud noises and fireworks in me. Even though I love fireworks, there's still a part of me that it just triggered. I can't stand really loud, sudden noises. It makes me, I feel like a dog, afraid of loud sounds.
Sure.
But that is one thing, when you're saying it moved me, that would really be the earliest thing I remember creating a lasting memory and moving me. But the good thing that I remember was my dad loved everything. He loved being a ham radio operator, doing radio in the basement. He loved audio recording and journalism recording, style recording like I always have. He had a Uher reel-to-reel tape recorder, which is a German-made portable quarter-inch tape recorder. That was
Impressive.
The recorder's recorder at the time in the 60s. And I thought that was the coolest thing ever. And I played with it all the time. And I think I played with it so much that my dad gave me my own cassette recorder because I was probably going to break the Uher playing around with it. As I broke
he knew
everything.
What he needed to do.
I broke everything my dad had. I just broke everything.
Oh,
so,
no.
So then I just remember recording myself and talking into that thing. And I remember my grandmother recording me and my brother. She did interviews of my brother and I as little kids.
That was a thing with grandparents. Yeah, my grandfather had one of those little tiny handheld tape recorders. You remember the ones that had like the tape that were like this big?
Yeah, I brought a micro cassette recorder on a trip to Germany when I was 16. I wish I knew where those tapes were. But yeah, I love that. My grandmother had the little plastic microphone, that plugged into the recorder, and she would put it in front of us, So those are my earliest memories of sound, recorded sound anyway.
Yeah. So did that get you interested in recording sound on your own or for other people? Is that where your love of audio? Yeah.
I was always recording myself talking or making funny sounds or recording music, different sources. I learned kind of early-ish on that my own recordings of records and CDs sounded better than the store-bought cassettes.
Interesting. Why was that?
Because cassettes are mass-produced in what was called a bin looping process. So they had these huge machines that ran really long pieces of tape through them at very high speed, duplicating the same, tape source over and over. And that high-speed duping process couldn't maintain the sound quality that you could do with your own cassette deck at home. So as a teenager, I eventually got a pretty decent cassette deck, and I started taping everything myself that I wanted to listen to while in my Walkman or when I was later in my car. And so that was kind of the most recording I was probably doing. At the same time, my dad bought a 4-track, a Tascam Porta 01. Mm-hmm. And that was really cool because it was a 4-track recorder with the mixer built into it, and it had D batteries, so it could be completely portable. And we would take it around in the field and record bluegrass groups and do field recording. So yeah, there was a lot of early memories of recording lots of different sources and playing around, but none of it in any way was related to, in my mind anyway, voiceover. It was all just sound gathering, recording engineering technique, and just having fun.
Well, that's definitely learning in the process. I mean, you have to start somewhere, right? Mm-hmm. You got to find that love for audio. But how did you get into the voiceover end of things?
Well, that's a much longer discussion.
Okay. But, we have time.
I mean, I went to Virginia Tech. I went to Virginia Tech for electrical engineering.
Yeah.
Because I thought that was what I wanted to learn to do, which was to actually design and make electronic audio. I thought I was going to design and make audio recording equipment. That's what, in my mind, I thought I was going to do, because my dad liked making things himself. Nothing complicated, but he would fabricate little projects, electronic projects for himself and others. And so I thought I was going to be doing that. Anyway, I had a miserable time as an engineer. It was far more difficult, mathematically oriented work studying that I was prepared for.
Oh,
but luckily,
I feel for you with the math.
It was brutal. I never forget sitting in differential equations class, shaking my head, like, why am I here? And the guy saying, most of you guys aren't going to need this, but you electrical engineers are going to be using this all the time. And that's what I thought I was studying. And I was like, I'm in the wrong major.
Wow.
It was really bad. So I also took an elective in music history at Virginia Tech. And the professor at the time, he was now long retired, but he was a very enthusiastic teacher, but also was really into recording, and used to record at the Aspen Conservatory of Music every summer in this program that they have there. And so he told me all about this. He showed me the facility that they have at the school, which was small, but very state-of-the-art digital audio recording technology for 1993. It was very state-of-the-art. And I was like, ooh, this is cool. And so I started realizing this is where I should be. I should be in the recording department, but they didn't have one. They had a music school. That means I have to audition and get into music school if I want to study recording, which was a blessing in disguise. I didn't want to be a recorder. I didn't want to be a musician per se, but I had a trumpet playing background, and I was able to get my way through the audition process and get into the school by the skin of my teeth. And as a trumpet player. And then so I just studied music as a necessary means to get more and more time in the recording studio. And 5.5 years later, I graduated from Virginia Tech with a degree in music and audio technology. So I took that degree home with me to Pennsylvania and started a remote recording studio in a truck. It was an old camper RV called the El Dorado. It literally said El Dorado on the front. And that's where the name of my first company came from, El Dorado Recording Services. So I started doing remote recording with this truck that my dad and I outfitted with DA88 multi-track digital tape recorders.
I love that your dad's still involved.
My dad was always has been incredibly supportive and involved.
That's great.
He was my Kickstarter. He literally helped me, completely funded that venture of starting that recording studio, not knowing at all if it would ever make money. My dad was a bigger heart than he was, and his heart was the biggest, not the biggest financial planner and financial whiz, right? But he was so supportive, and he helped me outfit this truck, and it was amazing. It never made a profit, but I certainly got a lot of really great experiences. I did some really interesting recordings in the field and all over the place. And in the meantime, in parallel to all of that, I ended up meeting a live sound engineer at a radio station in Philadelphia called, at the time, WYSP FM. It was the Howard Stern station. It was the big deal in Philly. And it was also the Eagles football network for the Eagles team. So I got through a friend of mine and through my cousin, actually, to meet this engineer. He brought me under his wing to be an intern and go to a few of the games and learn how audio engineering works in the radio world, right? Field recording and field engineering. And this all happened right around the time of the 9/11 attacks. And he quit his job at the station. He didn't want to fly anymore. People were freaked out. So I had 2 games under my belt of learning his esoterically custom designed rig that he built himself. And the next game, I stepped into his shoes and took over that role, engineering from the field, using ISDN and all this stuff. And so it was a total trial by fire.
Sure.
And through that connection, I met another talent at that station who moved to New York City, who became a full-time voice actor, who needed his first studio set up. So myself, my friend Lane Massey from the station, and I went to New York. I assisted in putting together the studio, just shadowing them. And Howard never forgot me, which was a great thing, because when he moved to LA and became a big shot promo trailer voice, he remembered me. And when I moved to LA in 2004, he caught wind of that. And he called me and said, "Can you help me out with my home studio?"
Nice.
He's literally, Howard Parker is who I call Client Zero.
Okay.
He's literally the
Thank you,
first
Howard.
voiceover actor that ever hired me to work on their home studio. And it just blossomed from there. It took a while, but he told his management about me, and they told Rick Wasserman and Rick Robles and Melissa Disney about this guy who's really great with home studios. And those were my first 4 clients. And that's where it all started for me. And that was in 2004.
Wonderful. Well, I mean, it's the power of word of mouth, right? Like, you
Absolutely.
do a good job, and this, every voice actor knows that too, right? Do a good job, people spread the word about what you're giving them. So.
Word of mouth, and then the dawning of Facebook, the Facebook era, which is the most powerful word of mouth magnifier on the planet Earth.
Totally.
All started around the same time. And so my business grew as Facebook popularity grew, because it just magnified it. And to this day, I have to check Facebook every single day, because people graciously tag me all the time in Facebook groups saying, "Hey, you should probably talk to GeorgeThe.Tech."
Yeah.
So I have to check that notifications bell every day and see what's going on. Did I get tagged? I need to respond, because Facebook today is still the number one driver of, I would say, word of mouth, quote unquote, in my business. So it's all about that word of mouth.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And I can imagine a lot of people tagging you, which would be a lot to handle. I know I tag you on a regular basis too.
And believe me, I appreciate it. But there's several of us doing this stuff now, right? So the really smart ones that are really good at being selfless will say, "I can do this," and so can, and they will tag me and Uncle Roy and a whole bunch of us, right?
Yep.
And then it's like, who's going to reply with their information first? It's a race to the who can reply quickest. But no, I'm grateful for it. This business clearly wouldn't happen without personal relationships, networking, and referrals. That's how this business came to be, and that's how it will continue to be for as long as we run.
Sure. Yeah. And you have a lot more staff now to help you out with everything. So that's a really great boon there.
Yeah. Staff, they're all part-time. Obviously, they all kind of are just 1099, or we call them, independent contractors, but they're available to be booked through the website.
Under the umbrella of, Yeah,
and it's awesome. It's so great, because now I'm not the only one that's available. Other people are available. We're going to start tiering out some of the pricing. So there's different pricing tiers once I figure out how to do that. And there's just a lot more availability now. Some of the folks on my team are willing to work weekends. I don't. So there's a weekend people.
Yep.
So we have Umberto. You know Umberto.
Oh, I know Umberto. Yeah.
Dude,
Hi,
is
Umberto.
Amazing, right? He's super multi-talented and multilingual, speaking Portuguese and Spanish.
He'll be editing this, so
dude, he is my secret weapon. Now I can service folks in other countries that speak Portuguese and Spanish, which covers a lot of people.
He's fantastic.
So we're just getting started at this whole being able to support multiple languages and multiple costs of living. Yeah. This is the tricky part, because, we can't just have a price. It works for US maybe, but it will not work for Hungary.
Yeah.
We got to have prices that will match different markets. So that's something that's going to be coming for our company over the next year as we figure out how to do that. But yeah, such a great team of people, the nicest people, super helpful, and really, really grateful to have found all of them. I found pretty much all of them through Facebook.
Yes, it's very true. Yeah. Mike McGonigal just helped me out recently over a weekend.
Awesome dude.
Yeah.
Awesome dude.
So yeah, that was really, really helpful. But in all of this, so you have your business and all of that settled, and you have a mission, don't you? What is that mission?
Well, I came up finally with a slogan, a 4-word slogan, which is voice actor friendly tech.
Okay.
So that's kind of the mission in a nutshell, right? Is whatever the technology is, it has to be friendly to the voice actor. There is a million technology systems and solutions out there that are certainly more friendly to the technologist, or the technical, or the engineer. And that is fine, right? But the problem is many of the voice actors that I work with do not come from a technical background. They come from theater, television, screen acting, or some other type of non-technical background. And the technical learning curve is really intimidating
it can
for some.
Be very...
It's not even intimidating, it's debilitating.
So yeah, it'll keep you from starting in the first place. So it's hard.
An incredible cloud of information that, depending on where you come into this business and what channel you come in through, you can either get really lucky and get the right advice very, very early on, or you can spend a couple of years overspending, buying really complicated tools and softwares, and getting not all the right advice and getting really, really, really frustrated. So our mission really is to make sure that you're not doing that. We really want to make sure that you're getting the best possible advice. You have the least painful process of operating your studio, and that the technology should sort of disappear after a while. And people are always like, should I upgrade? Should I upgrade? And I always will say to them, is what you're doing right now getting in your way? Mm-hmm. Is the computer getting in your way? Is there something about what you're doing that's a pain point that's slowing you down or frustrating you? That's what we should look at. But if you're using a 7-year-old or 17-year-old $300 microphone and you're booking every day and you're productive and your clients are happy, do you need to buy a new mic? No. Do you want to buy a new mic? Probably. Do you think it'll help with your branding? Maybe. But yeah, there's sometimes you just don't, you can run for years and years and not upgrade a single solitary thing and have a completely functional, great sounding and reliable to use studio. And that's really what we care about.
Yeah. I had, I think we talked about this before. I had the Motu Microbook silver box for years. And I loved that thing. It was super clean. It didn't do anything it didn't need to do. It was operated by software alone. It had nothing on, like the box was just a silver box.
Oh, it didn't even have a dial on it?
It had nothing.
Oh, okay. Got it.
It was nothing. And the only reason that I had to upgrade that was when I went from a Windows 7 to a Windows 10 machine.
Oh, yeah, because it was probably 32-bit only or something like that.
Yeah, it just wouldn't work.
That's the biggest heartbreaker. Some of the best equipment made will outlast the systems that it runs on. There's another one, the USB Pre, made by Sound Devices, American company, very pro quality, built like a field recording device where all the knobs are machined out of aluminum, built like a tank, right? I have 2 of them, I think. I may still have 1 or 2 of them. They are unusable. You can't plug them into any modern computer. You could plug it into an older Windows 7 32-bit computer and it will work like a champ. But it is a brick because it will not work on a new computer. And it's tragic because the hardware is flawless. Yeah. Great sounding. And this is the tragedy of some of the equipment out there. When the company decides they can't upgrade or can't, it just doesn't make sense for them financially to to make those leaps forward in technology.
Sure.
So yeah, that isn't that a bummer? I had the Motu Book 2, which actually I think had a knob on it.
Yeah.
And everything made by Motu in general, hardware wise, is another tier better than most of the competitors. Their stuff is really, really made to last. Really good quality.
I can't even remember why it was recommended to me, but somehow I got my hand on that, and I never.
They're a quirky company, you know. They're not that great at marketing. You do not
I don't hear about them at all.
They're
You're
not
right.
in the conversation very much. They did come out with a newer series that's a lot more affordable called the M series. They have the M2 and the M4, and there's some definite love for those, and people talk about them a little bit. But in terms of they're just not in the conversation, and it may be because they're at the entry point, they're still a lot more expensive than the other entry point stuff. So maybe that's what it is. But
yeah.
Good quality gear for sure.
When I went to my Windows 10 machine, the very first thing people told me about was the Steinberg, the UR22C. And I mean, it's a good piece of equipment.
Yeah.
But I don't know what it was. I was not a fan. And I don't know why I wasn't a fan. There was just something about it. Some sound, some way that it made me sound. I don't know. There was something about it that just it wasn't as clear. Definitely not as clear. And I couldn't put my finger on what the difference really was. Yeah. And so I've
What did you go to after that?
I'm using Fernando's his unit. His,
the Pod Mobile.
The Pod Mobile, at the moment. Until I get my hand on your new unit, which I'm waiting for.
Well, yeah.
Which we can talk about.
We're all hoping it happens.
Oh,
By
really?
the time you guys see all this video, we'll
Yep.
know if it succeeded or not.
Okay.
But at the time of this taping, we don't know because it's a pre-sale, pre-order, group buy kind of situation.
Yep.
And if we do not hit our goal, it will not exist, at least in the form that we think it will. It may not. It doesn't mean it won't exist ever. Yeah. But it may mean that it doesn't get produced this go around. So we'll see. But again, by the time you're seeing this, we'll know a lot more about this thing, because by the time you see it, we'll probably have had at least a prototype model to run, to play around with. But yeah, the Passport VO is me and my compadres from the Pro Audio Suite. It's our take on what we think the voiceover actor's audio interface, sort of the ultimate voice actor audio interface, could or should be. And so, we're hoping it's successful, and we hope it makes a lot of people's lives much, much easier in their home studio. Like, again, it was
just that
very
mute
much
button
centered
alone.
on actor functionality. It really takes like a lot. You know, have you done any live radio broadcasts?
I haven't. No.
Okay, you know, the consoles that they use in radio stations are very, very, very purpose made, right?
Okay.
And if you've ever seen a picture of one, you'll notice they don't have 400 knobs and switches on every channel, right?
Sure.
They have only what the on-air talent needs at that time, right? It has a fader for each mic, one for each CD player. Well, that's all gone now, but you know, they have very simple interfaces that have nothing in the way that an on-air talent would need, right? The problem is that's what we need for a voice actor, right? But we need it to be boiled down to a little thing. It doesn't need to be a big console. We don't have 14 inputs. We don't need all this stuff, right? So we're taking that mentality of broadcast on, it's got to be easy to use at a glance. It shouldn't need much of a reading of a manual at all. The buttons should be clearly labeled with lights to telling you whether they're on or off, which almost so many companies don't do this.
Yeah.
And so that's why this unit is, it's pricier than many of the other things that you think of when you look at audio interfaces for voiceover, like its competition, like the Scarletts and things like that. But that's because every little detail has been added in that was left out by everybody else. So fingers crossed. We hope that you can get one in your hands to put through its paces.
Well, I did see that there was only a very limited amount of them left at this point. So I'm hoping.
Here's hoping. Here's hoping.
I'm looking forward to it.
As Michael Goodman, the owner of Centrance, told all of us in this pursuit, he said, you're going to have a big spike, and then the sales are going to plummet off and level out. And so if you think you're meeting your goal based on the average per day sales numbers, think again. And he's absolutely right. We watched that exact pattern. So we're like, he's like, you got to keep the fires burning on this if you want this to happen. So it's been a process, but it's been a lot of fun getting to co-design a product, an actual physical thing that you can plug into your computer. So it's been really neat.
Well, that's the end of this episode. Thanks for listening. And if you like what you heard, why not tell a friend about this podcast? It's available in all the usual locations. Until next time,